Okay, welcome everyone. I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us for the October board meeting. And we'll go ahead and start this with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Not a big crowd tonight, but we'll entertain you for a while. So we got a couple missing tonight, and Grant might show up a little late, but we'll welcome him when he gets here. Otherwise, it's a team of 5 tonight. So, first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Hopefully you've had a little bit of time to read over this. Any questions, comments on the agenda? If there's none, we can entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Paul Hills.
Second.
Paul Birchie seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Do we have any public comments on any agenda items? Excuse me. Mic her up. Next item is correspondence to the board. Got this lovely card here from the other side of the state here. It says, thank you for the beautiful plant at my grandma's visitation. It meant a lot to my family to know you thought of us during that time. God bless, Mr. Coron. Look at the card. I won't say beautiful card, but it's a card. Too much to look. Got another one for the family of Larry Wilson. We would like to thank you for very pretty flowers that were sent to us. Your kindness is greatly appreciated by us all, Lynn and family. With that, we'll move on to recognitions. Okay, no recognitions. We have several principal and director reports as presented. Is there any questions on the reports as presented? With that, we'll move on to the MSBA report.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of October. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the mental wellness challenges facing many of our teachers and school district staff. The continuing COVID-19 pandemic has been stressful for everyone, but especially for school personnel. Addressing mental wellness issues among staff has become a major priority for school districts. Rachel Jones is the manager of trauma-informed treatment for the Missouri Department of Mental Health. She was a featured presenter at a recent School Safety Academy sponsored by MSBA's Center for Education Safety. And she says it's important to create a supportive culture for teachers and school district staff through what she calls team care.
Team care is about how the whole building is supporting the workforce. How are you tag teaming? Are you checking in and out with people? Are you buddying up with someone so that you have an outlet that's an adult, is safe, is appropriate, that you can vent when you need to, you can ask for help when you need to, you can tag out if you need to. Some school districts are really great about creating that team atmosphere atmosphere to help people in the moment and to help them prepare for what the day might bring to them, and even to decompress or debrief after a particularly stressful day or event.
Jones adds teachers and other school staff also need to take care of themselves as individuals.
Now, teachers individually need to be doing all the same things that we would recommend children do. Get regular sleep, drink plenty of water, eat food that is healthy, engage in activities that you enjoy that have nothing to do with your role as a teacher. So surround yourself with supportive friends and family and neighbors, and that can build up your strength to go into a school every day and handle all of those things that you won't be able to control. If you've got a good baseline and you're feeling healthy and well, you'll be able to manage the stress so much better.
MSBA has joined with other state education groups as part of a mental wellness think tank to develop a plan to provide additional mental wellness assistance to those in K-12 education throughout Missouri. The General Assembly has changed state law related to school board candidate filing for this year. Filing now begins earlier, ends earlier, and is shorter, now closing between Christmas and New Year's Day. Candidate filing for the April 2022 school board elections will begin on December 7th and end on December 28th. Contact the MSBA legal department if you have questions about school board candidate filing this year. Be sure your school board is represented at the MSBA Fall Delegate Assembly to be held on Friday, November 5th in conjunction with the MSBA Annual Conference in Kansas City. The Delegate Assembly will be voting on position statements that will form the basis of MSBA's advocacy efforts during the coming year. Every MSBA member school board is entitled to at least one voting delegate at the Delegate Assembly. And there's still time to register for the 2021 Annual Conference held in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators. The event is the largest gathering of school leaders in Missouri each year and will be held at a new location in downtown Kansas City from November 5th through 7th. Several specialized pre-conference sessions will be held on November 4th, including workshops for board secretaries, board presidents, board member certification, and an entire series of sessions on school safety during the Safe Schools and Colleges Forum. During the conference itself, November 5th, featuring some outstanding speakers and more than 100 concurrent sessions on a wide range of topics, ranging from legal and legislative updates to school safety seminars and presentations from school districts on innovative local programs. We'll also be conducting regional meetings during the conference, where you'll have the opportunity to meet with your colleagues from your area of the state and discuss issues of common interest. Registration information is available on the MSBA website. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Is there any questions, comments on the information presented by MSBA? Just to tag onto that, in talking with them, the President Workshop is open to all board members, and they will be talking for 4 hours about superintendent evaluation. So if anybody would like to go, it is from 1 to 5 on the 4th of November, in the afternoon of November there, so 4th of November. So encourage anybody, and if you guys want to go to that, please get with Dodie and she can sign you up. So, I do plan on going, so if there's any others, highly encourage some participation if you have the time to devote to that. Any questions, follow-up questions? Good. We'll move on to the superintendent report.
Thank you, President Bolden, and good evening, everyone. Welcome. Colonel Schlack, welcome. You picked a Hopefully a good meeting to attend tonight. It should be relatively short and sweet. So good to see you here. And well, Ms. Clark, welcome. Thank you for joining. And to our wonderful admin, it's a full moon week and yet you guys are still here. So I think they just wanted the quiet calmness of a board meeting. So keep up the good work. Without further ado, just want to kind of run through my report. As of this report, we're wrapping up first quarter of FY22, so a quarter of the year is in the books. And after clearing some high hurdles during the first couple of weeks of the school year with that early spike in COVID cases, we had a very quick spike and then a very quick drop. And we really flatlined with just a couple of random employee and student positive cases in the district. So overall, things are going really well. We're kind of cautiously looking ahead to the flu season to see how that may complicate the COVID situation, but our nurses have been prepared already and are looking forward to that optimistically. As a reminder, last year we were really worried about that Thanksgiving and Christmas break and the fallout after that, and we really didn't have that. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll see the same trend line this year. Several pieces of state assessment, student assessment data remain embargoed, and because of that, we're pushing that presentation back until that information becomes public. But Mr. Coron and our team has already begun looking at that data and addressing some specific areas, found that were actually really, really strong. So we'll continue to keep that up, but also some areas where we feel like we may have some distance to catch back up. So we're working on that with our team and our improvement in our buildings, but overall, pretty good information. ACT came in and it looks strong. So we'll have that full data presentation just as soon as we can. Financially speaking, we're moving forward with our ESSER 3 application. Now the funds have been released to the state. We've submitted and received initial feedback with some minor revisions that we'll be making over the next week, mainly in the coding, and we'll get that resubmitted. I will say as a follow-up to the MSBA report that a large portion of that ESSER funds will be directed to support mental health services issues among our students. So we're lined up there, hopefully to continue to do a good job of providing and meeting those needs for our students. We tentatively have planned for that final ESSER 3 to be presented to the board in November or December. Financially speaking, we're midway through our audit, and we are set to present the audit in November as well. There's a chance that may get pushed to December, but overall, we're looking to hopefully have that up for you guys next month. We're in our final days of wrapping up loose ends on the HVAC project. Once we're notified of final completion on that, the district will conduct an independent evaluation, as has been discussed, to basically create a punch list of remaining items before we finalize that contract. Those will then be passed on to the contractor to complete, and we'll wrap that one up. As the board is aware, we recently assessed the air quality in our weight and wrestling room. That assessment did result in a need to immediately conduct a deep cleaning of that entire space. This issue was caused in part by ongoing challenges with roof leaks, and I did have feedback from board members to go ahead and address those roof leaks at this time. We've moved forward in doing that. We're taking just a little bit of opportunity with that problem to go ahead and simultaneously address some ongoing issues, and at the end of that, we'll have a better, healthier space. With that, we've got a little bit of juggling with wrestling, the early part of wrestling season, as well as some ongoing weights, but we're trying to move through that as quickly as possible to get that space stood back up. On the conference, as President Bolton said, if you would like to attend, I'll be attending. Tentatively, I plan to make it on Friday and Saturday. I think Mrs. Miller is going up on Thursday. Are you staying? Do you know yet?
No,
Just Thursday. If you do decide to do that, the good news is it's closed, so you can go up and back if you'd like. If you want to go and stay overnight, you're welcome to do that. Just let us know. I'll allow the attendance numbers to stand as presented, along with the attendance percentages. Our district total enrollment is 1884, and it appears that Navnaster Middle School gets the gold star for highest attendance for the month. So well done, middle school. We are in the 93s, high 93s across the board for the most part, and hopefully those will pick back up this month. Financial reports for month ending September 2021 are balances for all funds, $21,872,089. Revenues today, $3,183,871, which is 14% of anticipated. Expenditures today, $3,921,885, which is 19% of budget. Also on my second page, I just recapped the out-of-district travel for the month and activities. We had the NAPIS conference, which is our Impact Day and Capitol Hill visits from September 19th to 21st. Upcoming activities for this month, we have the Association of Defense Communities Installation Innovation Summit in San Antonio from October 31st to November 3rd. At that, I'll be moderating a panel with Lori Phipps, who is the POC for all of our school liaison officers across the Air Force, and I'm moderating that with Halton Air Force Base and to be determined. So just kind of talk about the role of the SLO as kind of the keystone in the relationship between the school district leadership and the base. We're very fortunate here also to have strong ongoing support from our MSG, which is fantastic. So we get the 1-2 punch, and would be happy to highlight that relationship as well in a future installation innovation. This one is on our SLOs, but looking forward to that, and then of course our MSBA conference in Kansas City, November 5th through the 7th. With that, that concludes my report.
Any questions, comments from the board? Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. There's several items underneath there. Any questions, comments on any item? Okay. We can move forward with a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Paul Birchie.
Second.
Cliff Everett, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Welcome, Brent. Came in the most exciting time. Moving on to new business, the bills as presented. Is there any questions, comments, concerns with the board? Good. With that, we can move forward with the motion.
Make a motion that we approve the bills as presented.
Thank you, Paul Birchie.
Second.
Grant, seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So motion carries 5-0-1 with Cliff Everett abstaining. Next item on the agenda is interview summaries.
We just wanted to follow up on our exit interview recap that occurred last month with some data on our incoming personnel this year. And we actually, after originally posting this on the 15th with those responses, I went ahead and added an update with some responses that were received between the 15th and the 20th through the day, and included that as a kind of a additional artifact for you guys to look at. And I'll pitch it over to Mr. Corum to kind of talk you through that.
So one of the positives from this, after doing my quick math here, after receiving the 2 today, actually one last night and then one today, we got about 93% of these returned to us that we sent out. So much greater return than our exit interviews, which we're setting at usually about 50%. As you guys can all read that. We tried to stick to the same format and ask very similar questions, but asking why they chose Navnaster to come here to work. I'll go across the top there. You can't see that. So we asked why they chose to come and apply to Navnaster. We asked about their workload. We asked about base salary, and benefits that they have, the benefits with extra duty compensation. And we asked about all of their kind of benefits package from vision to anything that they possibly could have, even all the way down to the 403B. And then asked if there was any other benefits that we should be placing on there, just like we did on the exit interview, what they might like the most about the district, what they like the least, and then any suggestions or feedback that they have for us to be able to follow up on. And then just like on the exit interviews, the very far line all the way over to the right-hand side there are just my notes on just information that we need to follow up on, or excuse me, where I've actually followed up on that already at this time. The bottom two, the one that came in like at 10 o'clock last night, I did not see that until sitting down here, and then one came in actually today. So I have not followed up on those, but all the others, if there's any suggestions or follow through, I've followed up on those. Very positive remarks on there. Obviously, coming in as new teachers. This information will also be shared tomorrow in our admin meeting to the full admin, and we'll send it out. We want you guys to be able to get your eyes on it before.
Any questions, comments from the board on the responses? Okay. Moving on to the annual report for the transportation.
All right, after 15 clicks, it's up. Okay, so this is our annual transportation overview and program evaluation. This will look very similar, well, identical to what we've done for the last 6 years. And for New Member Hills, this is similar to what you'll see in most of our formats with ongoing historical comparative data that will help kind of make sense in trend lines. Bottom line up front, transportation is a very expensive program that we run in the district, and we have very little state or other funding to support that. But at the end of the day, it's required to get kids to and from school so that they can have a day of learning. We're one of very, very few school districts in the state that operate their own transportation. That's something that prior boards of education had the displeasure of discussing in terms of outsourcing, and the board made a very wise decision to keep this in-house, which has really offered us a lot of flexibility and allowed us to avoid some of the pitfalls that a lot of the outsourced districts in transportation have been seeing, especially most recently. So with that said, we'll jump right in. Have our mission statement to start up. Program overview for the year. Student ridership dropped significantly due to COVID. Employee salary and benefits increased moderately from the prior year. COVID coding accounted for around $20,000 in certified staff. So when you see that line item, just know that that's where we channeled some of our COVID funding to not supplement but offset some of our administrative salaries that were already existing. Supplies and purchase services costs decreased significantly from the prior year. We again received the exemplary school bus maintenance award for 2021, and overall the program costs remain constant with capital projects excluded. Here's our exemplary school bus maintenance award, compliance with 100% for 1 year. So kudos to our transportation team, Mr. Sater, Mr. Bazanga, and team for a job well done. This is our FY21 application for state aid. So this is what we submit into DESE. It has last year as well as this year. It just kind of goes through the metrics that results in that significantly underfunded amount of revenue that we receive. Here's our fleet overview for the year. So we run a depreciation schedule on our fleet as well as our facilities, and depreciate that at 12.5% per year. 2020 fleet overview for comparison. Facility overview, as mentioned, we get to depreciate that. It's not a lot of money, but it's a little bit. And the difference here is it's 5% annual depreciation per year. Fuel usage is a metric that we throw in here every year, and I kind of do an overview of comparative data. We dropped slightly in from 20 to 21. I'm sure you can anticipate what it's going to look like this year, so we'll look forward to discussing that next October. We do have on-site fuel storage. That's something that we changed 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5, and that's helped with allowing us to cut some of the cost with the bulk delivery throughout the year. This is our total expenditures for the program. Across the top, you can see certified salaries, non-certified salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, capital, and total. And the different categories are on the left side: contracted, district operated, disabled transportation, etc. This 2558 down here at the bottom left is that $22,083 of COVID funding that was channeled towards certified salaries to offset some of the work that we did during the COVID shutdown. Total expenditures for the year, $726,818 for this program. You can see FY20 total expenditures, same format, 19. And then here we have historical expenditures back to 2001 with the way that those break out per category and the total on the right-hand column. You can see that last year we were at $754,295. We're down slightly, but keep in mind we purchased a vehicle last year in capital, and that's really where that decrease accounts. Here's our revenue history by source. So unfortunately, these numbers are not in the right order. If they were, we would have the 8 as the first number. Unfortunately, the first number is a 1, so we're pulling in around $140,000 in revenues to offset that $700,000 plus in expenditures. Here's our difference between revenue to expenditures. You can see that we deficit spend every single year in the red. We deficit spent right just at $600,000 this year, a little over $600,000 last year. And then remember in 18-19, that's when we replenished our fleet and had that large capital outlay. So we are, as you know, going to work in some ongoing bus purchases throughout the year. So look for those to jump that number up a couple $100,000 as we start getting into a routine every year of purchasing buses. Major transportation issues on the horizon. Just to put it very simply, recruiting great bus drivers, quality certified bus drivers, and maintaining those is an ongoing challenge. It has been an ongoing challenge. It continues to be an ongoing challenge. We've been lucky to pick up a couple of people, but we continue to shake the bushes and try to not only recruit drivers, but stack those up with other services like custodial or maintenance so that we can put together a package to recruit new folks to the district. So if you know anyone, please continue to send them our way. We definitely can use help in that area. The new Dollar Tree, I call it new, it's been around for a couple of years, but that definitely increased the demand in the area for a variety of our classified staff areas. And then, of course, COVID has only complicated that issue. So we're keeping our head above water, but our team is really pulling together and making things continue to work in this department. And again, if you know anyone that would like to drive a bus, we would love to have them on our team. And that concludes this report.
Any questions, comments from board members? Okay, this is an action item, so we need a motion to move on.
Motion to approve the annual transportation report and program evaluation as presented.
Thank you, Grant.
I'll second.
Casey seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Next on the agenda is the food service annual report.
Okay, very similar format on this one again for board member Hills. Historical data, hit the highlights of the program for this year. This is another one of those areas where boards of the past went through that process of bringing this program back into house. We outsourced for 5 years with OPA and made the decision to bring that back in-house after ongoing deliberation. And that's proven to be a really good move as well. It gives us a lot of flexibility, especially right now with what's going on with the COVID supplements. It's allowed the district to really take advantage of that opportunity, which will help us finish our FF&E in this department. So things are going really well. Our kids are participating in the program at higher levels than ever before, and the board is looking very good for past decisions that were made. Program highlights for 2021. Overall total revenues were up significantly from last year, and that's due to COVID. For the second time in 20 years, the district operated in the black, with the exception of 1 year of that 5-year stint with OPA. They barely operated in the black, but these 2 years have been really good for our program in-house. That is related to the COVID revenues, but overall it's good news. Lunch and breakfast participation numbers are up from last year, and free meals for all drove that program participation. We have our goals of the programs to offer high quality nutritious meals for students, operate at least a financial break even, ensure compliance with all state and federal guidelines, offer food choices which result in increased student participation over time, offer market competitive wages to employees, and ensure that all state and federal reporting is accurate and timely. Our staffing has remained the same from last year to this year. Actually, it's remained the same for several years. We've run a total of 14 staff members. Our food service program director, Mrs. Jamie Sager, at the food service program clerical administrative support with Kelly Frieden, food service program clerical support in each of the offices, which are the assistant office managers, and then 3 full FTE positions for food prep in each building. Our food service revenues, again, we've broken that down by category: local program, local non-program, state, federal lunch, federal breakfast, and then over here on the far right, that large $1,082,000 number, that's prior was only the summer school supplemental income. That is a Department of Health program, so we've batched our COVID revenues in with Department of Health as well. So you can see that our total revenues are $1,120,974, which is up significantly from the prior year, or frankly any prior year. So that's good news, and again, that's driven by the COVID supplements and the increase in participation due to the Free for All food program. On the expenditure side, we have this broken down into non-certified salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, supplies, and capital outlay. You can see that our non-certified salaries were up slightly, employee benefits up slightly, purchase services were down about 90%. Our supplies went up by about $140,000. Again, more meals being served equates to more supplies. And then our capital outlay went down slightly. So we saw an increase of about $130,000 in expenditures last year. And again, that is related to that increase in participation due to COVID. Food service revenues versus expenditures. Again, over here on the right, all of those red numbers are where we were deficit spending. You had this year back in 15-16, where OPA operated at a $6,372 in the black budget. And then up here for the last 2 years, last year we were $20,000 in the black, and then, two years prior, $20,000 in the black, and then last year we were at right at $210,000 in the black. We will again see similar numbers this year, maybe even a little bit stronger on the revenue side, and we intend to roll some of those windfalls into our equipment to try to get our kitchens, our 4 kitchens stood up in good operational order to carry us forward. Again, this is a different way to look at the deficit spending. You can see those years where it was district operated, all the way up to, through OPA and then back to district. Participation overview. We started doing this and trying to put this together when we were really trying to crunch the numbers on what it would look like to bring this back in-house. So we started looking at the number of reimbursable meals served as compared to the average daily participation and the percent of average daily attendance. So you have those numbers. And then we tried to do the same for breakfast, and then use those numbers to try to calculate a food and a human resources cost as a function of reimbursable meal. You can see in 2021 that our food cost as a function of a reimbursable meal went up slightly, but remember that we were packaging those meals in different ways, so there was some cost with the packaging, as well as we know that food costs continue to go up. So overall, pretty good. Really good when you look at the difference in the number of meals served, compare that to our same staffing and to the revenue generated. So overall, a bumper year for our food service staff, and we continually relay that to Mrs. Sager and her team. On the same note, we tried to calculate the employee cost as a function of reimbursable meal. This is where you can really see where those revenues were created. We went from $1.81 with the COVID adjustments. Prior to that, it was $1.91, $1.84, down to $1.28. So we were producing plating meals at a significantly reduced employee cost. So we would love to keep that up moving forward, but we know that batching those tasks, there's some quantities of scale and efficiencies that have occurred. Legislative impact, this is something we've all seen before. We still align to the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. I won't go through that again. It did kick in 2009. COVID, we're aware of what's going on there. I will say that most recently we did purchase a outside cooler and stood that up and have that packed out with food. We have some ongoing food challenges in getting those foods into the district. That we're not alone on that. We're seeing that in many districts. So we kind of took a calculated risk to create that freezer space so that we could get food that was available to us, get it in storage, so that if we see some significant roadblocks with that food delivery, we'll have about 3 months supply on hand to get us through. So we're hoping to continue on that path through about February. If we can get through that mark, then we can take a deep breath and feel pretty good. So I don't know what world we're living in or where all these people have gone, but that transportation supply line has really caused us to reevaluate how we get our supplies. And it's not just food, it's paper products and a lot of other issues. So we're trying to stay ahead of that curve. Future considerations. Turnover in staffing continues to be a challenge. We actually hired back an employee that was previously in this department, came back and is doing a really nice job for us. So it's always good to see someone leave and come back. But we hope to be stabilized. We lost a couple. We have another retirement that's coming up. But overall, that department has much more lenience than what we're seeing in our other areas. Talk about equipment. We have some aging equipment. We'll be standing up a plan to replenish that and get us in good shape for the next 15 to 20 years. We talked last year about that centralized walk-in freezer. We kind of did a stopgap on that for this year, mainly because we don't know exactly where we want that to be placed for longevity. So we'll look at that as we move through our facility plan on our high school considerations. And with that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. Any questions, comments from the board?
I would like to personally thank Dr. Wheeler and his team for standing up the food service program from the time Opal was there. You were here, Mr. Squirrel was here. We had a lot of negativity and bad, feedback on Facebook, constant pictures and everything else, so you all have done a phenomenal job in changing that for the better. Same way with our transportation, we had some really tough times, several years back, and I can't tell you enough that Katie and her team have done a phenomenal job. We're in the same boat as everybody else, just that can't find enough help. But I think we are much better off than just about any district that surrounds us. And it's because of, you all took on that challenge and made it.
Thank you for that, and I'll again pitch it right back to you and others that came before this team. Did you have that pleasure of being on that one?
Yeah.
You did. Okay. Hopefully, yeah. Well, we don't always get it right, because I know that we were all split on that, but it's proven to be the right choice. And we talked about what that would mean for our employees and the quality of employment for them with benefits, and it's proven to be a great thing. Now, we'll be back in the red as soon as things balance out with COVID, or barely in the black, but that's okay. That's a goal. So thank you for that feedback. And nobody else had that pleasure, did you?
Well, we all know what it's like to have one picture put on Facebook along with many other pictures. But I'm talking about the nachos that turned out to be a disaster. And it's just like, somebody was pouring gas on those fires to bring more bad attention to our district. And we made it through all that.
We did.
Did a great job.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No, I think, whether the board says it, I think, everyone appreciates, the program and definitely, see, the good things that are happening there and appreciate the work there.
Thank you.
So this is an action item. We need a motion to approve the food services annual report, if it's the will of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the food service annual report and program evaluation as presented.
Thank you, Paul Hills.
Second.
Cliff Everett, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Next on the agenda is the staffing allocation. This is kind of an update for the document that was started last year. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at that. Is there any highlights that you want to present? Looks like a similar format and everything.
Well, I do have a couple of highlights. I was going to joke and point out line 4 with Mrs. Hawker being our new director of student services, but she's not alone in that. We have a new director of technology. We have multiple new building administrators, and actually a very unique year in terms of the hiring. I want to give a special thanks to Mrs. Harding, Mr. Coron and team for the onboarding of employees. I'll get to that in a minute, but really what this is designed to do is a couple of things. Give the board really a one place, one-stop shop to go and see where our primary assignments for all of our employees, where they land in the organizational chart. We have this divided by district level, those people that serve multiple areas of the district, both in instructional and support capacities. And then at the bottom of each of these sections, we have this kind of divided out by the number of students served. And we have that broken into district level total FTE per student, and then instructional FTE per student, just to look at those metrics. We know that we operate 2 elementary buildings in this district, and those metrics at the bottom give us an opportunity to see if we're equitable in how we staff our buildings. It's not a bulletproof approach, because we know that within those buildings we may have some class numbers that are slightly larger than we'd like to be, and some that are slightly lower. We have some additional metrics that we try to run to ensure consistency there. But overall, it really shows how we allocate to equitably support our buildings. And then we can do the same for our middle school and our high school. We've got our preschool numbers. These are a little bit skewed on our preschool because I don't have any of the support staff for Whiteman Elementary calculated into that metric. So that's a little bit of a outlier there, but overall that program is run pretty efficiently. Then at our middle school, high school, we know it takes a few more educators to stand up their programs as we split into some of the electives and career programs. Break that down in the same way by students per FTE and students per instructional FTE. And we kind of compare our middle school to our high school primarily. And then at the bottom, I kind of put all of that into one table to really show how that breaks out. So overall, we could run a little more lean, but our academic performance is very important. We want to continue to invest in our people and our programs and have a healthy staffing ratio. But overall, the numbers look pretty good. New this year on this report, and I don't know, I want to make sure that this isn't misleading for anyone, but I was curious just to see, we knew we had a really big year of turnover with a number of retirements. Of course, we continue to hire a lot of military connected employees and their ongoing PCS turns over staff. But I wanted to run metrics on the number of current employees out of a total of 265 and how many remain from the year that they were hired. And currently on staff, those hired 2000 and before, we have 23. You can kind of look through those numbers. Now, keep in mind, this is remaining. So there may have been a lot more, or there no doubt were a lot more people hired in those years that have just moved on from the district or have retired. But it gives you an idea of how long some of our folks have been in the district. And then down at the bottom, you can see that big jump in 2020. That does span anyone hired in the calendar year 2021, not just for the FY22, but you can see there's a pretty big jump there, up to 69 employees, and as compared to 25, 24 remaining from the year prior. So what we hope to see is we hope to see that number remain high as we move through the years ahead. That means that we retained that larger number of employees that were hired this year. But that also says that our HR department has been very busy this year, and that also this number does not include the approximately 150 substitute employees for the district that we're working to manage as well. But pretty interesting number. I knew it was a big year for us, but once I got that on paper and did the longitudinal comparison, it explained why we need a revolving door in the district office. So with that said, I would open up for any feedback or anything that you guys would like to see. As a reminder, we do a similar printout on our supplemental contracts here in the next month or so, so look for that to be forthcoming. Also this year, on that far right-hand corner, I went back in and added in the date of hire. If you see two numbers, for instance, that is the date of hire, as well as the date in which they took their new assigned position. With that concludes this report.
Any questions, comments from the board? A lot of good information there. Appreciate that, and appreciate keeping that going. Kind of gives some historical. It'd be interesting to see how that bottom chart continues to fall out over the next several years.
I think I'll transition that into a table so that we can see that over time. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a purchasing policy overview. I asked Dr. Wheeler last month to come up with a summary of what our board policy states for purchasing. I was talking to some board members, and there was some unawareness of kind of how to implement the policy and some of the things. So Just as a refresher for all of us, I know when we came on, we got to sit through several hours of training and went through a lot of this, but sometimes that doesn't sink in quite as much as it probably should, at least for me anyway. So, asked Dr. Wheeler to put this together. I asked for it to be 10 pages or less. I think he achieved that, and just kind of a brief overview meant to help educate board members on what to expect and just what our policy states. So appreciate you putting that together. Looks great. Teach us.
So, again, we had this intentionally brief. We can get definitely into the weeds on this, and frankly, especially when we get into major construction projects, we will get into the intricacies of how we procure. But in general, we have policy DJF-1, which provides guidance on our purchasing. The purpose of the policy is to ensure that all purchases of supplies, equipment, and services are made in compliance with state and federal law and good business practices. The board recognizes the importance of a sound fiscal management program and expects district staff to maximize the resources available for the district's educational program and be good stewards of public funds by exercising fair, competitive purchasing practices. So I'll read this to you, but this is language taken or condensed from policy. With DJF-1, with our purchasing policy guidance, we have a couple of things here that I thought were important to clarify. The district may use the following competitive purchasing approaches. The first approach is up to $3,500. The district, we're expected to contact multiple providers or price items or services. So if it's something $3,500 or less, we should reach out and at least have some bids and comparative prices to share on that. We also have from $3,500 to $50,000. We should competitively bid the item or service. So we should, again, find a way to competitively make sure that we have bids in hand to compare how we procure that item or service. And then anything over, any item or service over $50,000, we require those sealed bids for the item or service, and we would do additional advertising. With that, the lowest or best bid must be selected or purchased on the open, the lowest or best bid must be selected, or the purchase can be made on the open market. So with all of the resources on the internet, let's say we bid something, we got bids back for a single item, and then we said, well, I can still buy it over here that I found a price on the internet cheaper. We have the opportunity to do that. So the policy states that we can reject bids and move that direction. That typically doesn't happen. Oops, let me go back. Also at the bottom, I think this is where sometimes vendors especially question how we procure items. The district may also utilize the following approaches. One would be competitive negotiations or proposals rather than competitive bids. That's where we can reach out to known vendors and say, hey, we're looking for this product or service. We need this to happen in this way, and please provide us a proposal. That sometimes will happen. We see that sometimes not entirely often. I think we saw that, we've done that recently. I would have to think back what it was for. But after receiving the bids, we went into a competitive negotiation and actually were able to go with that route. So it does happen often, or it does happen sometimes, but not often. We also can utilize cooperative purchasing. Cooperative purchasing is where the items or services have been pre-bid. That's not something that we do a lot, but we do that occasionally. That takes the bidding requirements out of it, and essentially they will provide their product or service to a larger conglomerate of organizations, and then we take advantage of that process. Sometimes we can utilize sole source purchasing. For instance, if we want a Ford truck and we want to go to the fleet price, we can go, okay, we want a Ford truck, we're going to Ford Manufacturing to provide us a fleet price and provide that direct purchase. We have done that on a couple of occasions recently. And then 4 is something that we actually utilize quite a bit, and that's utilizing known providers or ongoing business partners. In doing that, we ensure competitiveness. This is one that, if you look at our HVAC and how we procured that, notwithstanding this large project that's going on right now, but prior to that, we really had an ongoing relationship with Home Heating and Cooling, and have maintained that relationship and have them on call. That's something that we can look to rebid, but once we do rebid it, we really want to keep that relationship just to build that so that every time we have a unit go down, we don't have to go through the process of bidding that, securing bids, expanding that timeline, and then coming back. So that's one that comes to mind. We have that with some of our food vendors that we purchase from. We have multiple. We have the primary food contract that we went through that market analysis on a couple of years ago, but with the situation right now, we're going to multiple food providers and getting what we can where we can. So that's something that we use. We've used that, I think, with some of our asphalt sealing in the past, but it's basically going with those known business partners or approved vendors, and in doing that, we ensure competitiveness. Sometimes we'll go to multiple, if it's a bigger HVAC project or maybe a bigger sealing project, we may go to multiple known providers and allow them to provide a bid. Next up is the bidding requirements. This is policy DJC. Other purchases or contractual services may be advertised and submitted for bid as directed by the board, or when in the opinion of the superintendent, the welfare of the district will be served. The board may require a bidder to submit a cashier's check or a bidder's bond. The board reserves the right to reject any and all bids or any part of any bid. The board reserves the right to waive minor technical deficiencies in any bid, and any bid may be withdrawn prior to the scheduled time for the opening of the bids. Any bid received after the time and date, if we're doing sealed bids, would not be considered. Generally, bids accepted by the board pertaining to contract services and or benefits shall be on an annual basis. However, the board may enter into multiple year agreements as long as the payments under the contract don't exceed our reserve balances plus any revenue expected. Busing would be one of those areas too where we use ongoing known providers with Apple Bus. They do run some of our off routes in our special services department. Federal programs purchasing. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that federally funded programs and projects in the district are administered in accordance with federal laws. On the procurement, in addition to the following requirements of state law, board policy and district procedures, the purchasing officer will ensure that all supplies, equipment, and services purchased with federal funds are purchased in accordance with federal law. And again, that applies pretty heavily in our special services department. Any equipment has to be cataloged and maintained by the district until such time that it could be surplus if the district chooses to do that. Policy FEB, now we're getting into construction projects. FEB gives guidance on the selection of an architectural, engineering, and or land surveying services. This is a request for qualifications process. So unlike a bidding process, this is where we publish, accept proposals, review those proposals, and select firms based on their qualifications. Once we select on qualifications, then we go into the process of negotiating price. Doesn't make sense to me just to select and then figure out what it's going to cost you, but that's the law on this. We've been through that process with an architectural and engineering firm. We do then have flowed some of our surveying services through our AE agreement. Next up is policy FEC, which is a selection of a construction management services. This is a request for proposal or RFP process. To me, this one makes more sense. The board may, at its discretion and in accordance with law, contract for construction management services when planning, designing, constructing, improving, altering, or repairing a building or structure. This is where you basically put a bid out and you receive back a proposal with a cost. This is again for construction manager. Thank you. Next up is policy FED, which is selection of a construction manager at risk. Again, we're back to the RFQ process, and it does offer some relatively new guidelines in this area. When we use a construction manager at risk for civil works projects in excess of $2 million and non-civil work projects in excess of $3 million. In accordance with law, a construction manager at risk will be selected utilizing the RFQ process described in policy FED and in accordance with details in policy FED. Next up is policy FEE, selection of a design build contractor. Again, this is the RFQ process followed by an RFP process. So the board may, at its discretion and in accordance with law, use the design build construction method for civil works projects regardless of cost or non-civil works projects in excess of $7 million. In accordance with law, a design build consultant will be selected utilizing the RFQ process described in policy FEB and in accordance with details in policy. The district will solicit proposals in a 3-stage process. Phase 1 shall be the solicitation of the design build team. Phase 2 shall be the solicitation of a technical proposal, including conceptual design for the project. And phase 3 shall be the proposal of the construction cost. The district will assign points to each proposal in accordance with law and as set out in the instructions of the RFP. Doesn't that sound like fun? I'm sure you guys will basically do that quite a bit. Okay. Policy F.
We have 2 steps.
You have 2, not, okay. So we did something actually more complicated than, okay. Kudos MSBA. All right. Policy FEF-1 is construction contracts, bidding and awards for bidding. And this goes back to that $50,000 mark. All construction projects that may exceed an expenditure of $50,000 shall be advertised in the newspaper of general circulation once a week for 2 consecutive weeks in accordance with law, and should also be advertised in places likely to get responses from contractors. Those places should include business, trade, or minority newspapers or other modes of communication such as the district's website or other websites. Projects will not be split or artificially divided for the purpose of avoiding these competitive bidding requirements. And I think that was my 10 slides.
Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. I think what you mentioned about professional services, the idea behind that is that you can give people that don't know what they're doing, they can give you a low bid, and when they're designing things according to life safety and things like that, you want to make sure you get the most highly qualified person, and then you go into a competitive process to negotiate that with the fee for those things. So you don't want the lowest bidder designing something that all of our students depend on, whether it's anywhere from fire alarm systems to whatever it would be. So that's kind of the intent of that. And when you get into the professional services and you ask for qualifications based stuff. So in the government and design build, we have to go through a 2-step process. It's mandated by law. We combine 2 of these where in the federal government, but basically the last 2 we combined into one where we evaluated the technical and price at the same time. So very, very similar to what is required of the federal government and especially military type construction processes. So any questions, comments?
What is that 3,500 and the 3,559? What are those, who sets those numbers?
Who sets those numbers?
Yeah. Is that set by the state or is that board
The-
policy?
It's set by board policy. I think that $3,500 number can actually be increased. We just discussed that with the auditor. They were suggesting that we may be able to increase that up to, I think maybe 15,000. But that, right now, that's what our policy states. And you could take it down as well.
So to kind of recap those three different deals, one is like phone calls to everybody. Two, you get a proposal from, an informal proposal, you don't have to publish it or anything, you just get, you go out and solicit multiple proposals, and then you evaluate those, and then the third is you broadcast that out, cast your net and see what you get back to evaluate.
So like all of our school bus bids or sealed bids, like when we price minivans, since at least when we have multiple different options, we'll price out new sealed bids. But yes, that's generally what we do.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
I thought that up to 3,500 used to be lower. Did we change that some time ago, or?
I'd have to look.
I can't remember exactly.
I don't think so, but we could have. You feel like it was less than 3,500 before?
I thought it was $2,000 at one time, but I may have that mixed up with something else. I mean,
I don't ever remember a $2,000 limit here or in a prior district.
The policy was updated this year, so.
and I would feel comfortable raising that at some point. Once we had a discussion about it. That looks good, thank you.
Final follow-up questions, comments? Thank you, Dr. Wheeler, for putting that together,
Thank you.
educating us.
Hopefully we get to know all of those a lot better in the years ahead, hopefully. For good reasons.
So next is old business on the Panther Stadium update. This is, you want me to take that or this one? So we, several months back, I asked for volunteers for a subcommittee to try to ensure that the will of the board was going to be met whenever we present something to the board. And so we had Mr. Hilsey, Mr. Everts, and myself volunteer for that. And so we've had a initial meeting to make sure that we took the notes that we did from the board meeting where we walked around, and now Insight is working up a plan for those three different options. And so the subcommittee is in Cliff, speak up. Paul Hills could not meet with us last time, but it looks like this next one he's going to be able to meet. So we're just trying to make sure the intent of the board and to get that, so we have an efficient presentation whenever we come to the board with those three different options. So looks like it will be in November when we'll get that to the board. We'll have a couple, three more, hopefully one or two more subcommittee meetings to flush out questions, comments, and adherence to what the will of the board was. Good stuff, and I hope to bring you some options with Dr. Wheeler on the November board agenda. So be prepared for a little presentation there to kind of dissect those and make sure we understand what's in and what's out of each one of those. So want to make sure that we get clear, concise, and so we can publish that for the board and the public. Did I capture, add on whatever you want to do there?
Only thing to add on, I sent out a message about a meeting next week, and everyone has confirmed back that Monday at 6 will work.
Yeah.
So we're set. I'll send a calendar invite out for you guys, but Monday at 6 back here, and Insight will has confirmed their attendance as well.
Good. Cliff, you wanna add anything?
The only other thing is we're pending, that $4.5 million, FEMA grant. Hopefully, if the timing works out, hopefully by the latest December, we'll get word back. I'm really, really hopeful on this and kind of hold my breath.
In November, you will be presenting a presentation, not a vote, not a motion.
Correct. So what the board asked for was 3 different options, to include renovation on our current footprint, and up to, we left the doors open for whatever, the other bookend would be. So, that's the 3 options, that are coming. I think there might be a 4th in there with the grant, included in there, so, hopefully it will be information to feed, future motions in the future. So we need to kind of get a master plan idea, and then we need to discuss how we go forward to accomplish that, or it's not. So the continuum of great ideas, but we don't want to act right now, to let's implement it all. So somewhere on that continuum is what the board needs to come up with guidance from all the information that's presented. So that concludes our open session for tonight. I want to thank everybody for sticking in there with us. We went through a lot of information. Appreciate staying with us. So with this, we'll close this meeting and move on to our closed session with a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn the executive session pursuant of RSMO 610.021, 2, 3, and 13 by roll call vote.
Thank you, Casey.
I'll second that.
Cliff Everett seconds. Roll call vote starting with Paul Hills.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 6-0. We will adjourn for, try to be back here at 7:25.
See you, we got several on there. We got one, two years, 2 or 3 years. The $35 million unfunded. Because, that thing over the past 4 years, it's speeded up the way up. It's gonna happen to us next year. It's going. I don't know this. I should try to get. Well, because then if we're using the consolidated, not supposed to be that bad. No, the project that they're trying to do for the fire station right now is to actually move it from outside the white line and put a whole new station in. Is that way it includes it? I'm not sure where they, I don't know if they have a site. Yeah, that's the, they're gonna pull the entire fire station out. crash site inside and everything, I'm trying to split out, they're gonna clean everything out, so if the fire trucks have to go all over the field, they have to keep this off station. We're talking about the community, split off. So they're talking about bringing everything outside for this secure area. To me, it's like, that's not weird, because the airfield,
So they can't just like drop off back there on the
no, the problem is where they're at right now, they don't straddle the fence line, they're inside secure area, so the structural fire guys have to drive through the control gate, and then get to the north house and south house. And right now, they go, supposed to like 7 minutes, and I think they're furthest away to know. So they miss it by just a couple of minutes, but, you know, the fire.
And that's
Yeah. So, I got some real good relationships with the fire chief, and others up there out there, all working on a bunch of things. Yeah. The new building is our number one outbound project, the dormitories in the top. And so the fire station is on here too, it's estimated 35 feet. It's just we think it's gonna be this because the intent is just to improve the fire station. You're not gonna have to okay. But it would come everything outside of the we're also trying to get this whole fire station. Oh yeah, we've been trying to start all the ready, so maybe it would make you just all that. Yeah. There's so many committees, working groups, and stuff that are either OSCO or
So will they be,
well, not my, it's like bringing it all. It's
right. Yeah. Put a tray up there. So that they are staggered, like five pages. And they're all set, that much. So there's scopes, like SO. Number 9.
And what's inside of there? I was like, man, I didn't eat nothing all day. I didn't eat nothing all day.
You better get your plates.
What did you say was in there? Like frosting or something?
There's like cream.
I was like, oh yeah.
There was a frozen section at the store. I love them.
Look at this at Walmart. A friend of mine just sent me a picture. $10 and the bacon right next to it, $10. Yeah. What is it?
$10 for bacon?
$10.54 for a pound of bacon at Walmart. $10.54, a friend of mine sent me a picture.
I bought the pound of that package for $6.54. Great value, yeah, I thought it was fine. I bought the great value pound and a half for $6.54 last week. St. Louis ribs were $2.94 a pound 2 weeks ago, they were $4.88 a pound. Thursday on Friday. Yeah. Well, instead of me cooking 4 slabs on Saturday down here, I cooked 2.
Well, you know, price of gas.
I just took my chances. If I ruin them, I ruin them.
Price of gas is gonna keep going up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Got another 18-wheeler coming Friday, man, full of fuel.
They're saying we're gonna have shortages on everything.
Mhm. I'll be out there tomorrow.
Beaver doesn't.
No.
There's no roasting station left.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll let you roll out the dough.
No. Oh. I like to bake, but no, that's me too much.
Yeah, you just think underpriced.
I've been wrong for 2 years, guessing. Your OSBs and your straightforward. You know, they came down pretty fast, but they're starting to back. I think you're back.
That's it, so.
We're about giving it away. I mean, about paying people to take it right now. Sitting on so much, but bought high and we need it back up. But
So did you make the pasta time?
your trim boards and get doors.
Pasta salad, great thing.
Oh, you're welcome.
Noodles to the side.
Yes, they do. I heard no, completely closed now.
You'll have